Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jig, for having me.
I'm really excited to get you on today. Shout out to Jin for putting us in touch. And I'm going to start very simple question. What are you most excited about working on at the moment?
Ooh, I actually have a new program that I'm launching, and it's specifically for professionals that are feeling really stuck. And it was very much inspired from where I was about 10 years ago, of being in this very glitzy job, working in corporate finance, having done all the right things, of getting a good education, working hard, working at a great firm. And I found myself back around 2015, just sitting in my office looking around being like, is this it? Like, I've done all the right things. And I just felt really, really stuck. And the journey to getting to where I am today really was a financial one, right? Money is more than just money in the bank. It's freedom, it's opportunities, it's choices, right? You get to reclaim ownership of your life and your destiny. So I'm actually working on a new program that is specifically targeting people who feel stuck. Now, they may be in the same position I was in corporate, maybe it's in their careers, in life. They're just like, I feel trapped right now. I've done everything society told me to do to get this, big successful life, and it hasn't worked. So we're really going to hone in, and maybe we'll talk about it today in the conversation, but things around money, like managing your money, making more money, multiplying your money. This has been the path I've gone down, and I've learned all the lessons along the way. So I'm like, all right, let me package this up, save people years of trying to figure it out themselves, and provide it as a really easy solution to help them get unstuck so they can pursue what they're really happy about, what actually lights them up. So that's probably what I'm most excited about working on at the moment.
Brilliant. What a great start. It makes it so easy for me to follow up with questions. So I'd love to kind of transport back to 2015. What were you doing?
Yeah.
What was the pain point? Like, take us back to like a morning or some moment when you're like, right, fuck this. I've got to do something different.
One jumps to mind so distinctly, right? So I was someone who came out of school, was like, I'm good at business and I'm good at maths and I want to make money in the world. And I didn't come from that kind of family, who was particularly wealthy or had any kind of financial guidance. So I was like, well, where am I going to go? Well, finance, obviously, because that's where everyone makes a lot of money and gets really rich. And so that was kind of really the driving force behind me pursuing a career in finance. And so studied at university for 4 years, became a chartered accountant, and was working at a big four firm in Dublin back in Ireland. And I ended up in a team that, good for them. I'm not criticizing anyone, but it was a type of forensic accounting, which was never on my vision board. I didn't even know what forensic accounting was until the day I turned up to my job and was like, oh, you're in corporate finance, but actually you're going to be a forensic accountant. And one of the jobs that we were on was involving like this bank, investigation. And basically how it ended up was me alone in this big room, because they didn't really want me there, in dusty boxes, having to photocopy about 30 boxes of information. So I could then scan it and bring it back to the office for us to go through. And it was so mind numbing. And so I was new in the city, and I was literally waking up, going to this office, meeting no one, doing the most mundane, boring, excruciating work, back home. And I literally felt so miserable. And I just remember one too many times after that, sitting there being like, how is this it? Like, there has to be more. And, this was back before social media was even a big thing. But there was one blogger I was following at the time who was like traveling the world and having her online business. I remember looking at her being like, how did she do that? Like, how do you even take this step out of this? Because I was so reliant on that income. I didn't have like savings. I didn't have a trust fund from my parents. I love them. They're amazing. But financially, there wasn't that like safety net for me to say, this job isn't working. I'm going to figure out something else. Like, I needed to pay my rent next month. And so I felt so utterly trapped. And that is a pain that I know I'm not the only person who's going to have experienced or has experienced. But it is awful when you feel like you have no choices and you're literally stuck in a situation.
And so Laura, like, what did you do?
So, the universe works in very mysterious ways. And
Indeed.
I'd love
Yeah.
to say
So
it was a
how
coincidence.
did you did that, how do you get yourself from there to where you are today? I mean, amazing.
Yeah, so through a random series of events, which I just look back as like serendipity or like the universe having its hands in, hearing me ask the question of, I want things to be different. Like, I'm looking for change. I can't
Mm.
live life like this. Like, there has to be something else. I think starting with that question, that desire for change, I was randomly on a trip and met someone who had Instagram, and I was like, what is this? And I hadn't heard of it before, which is crazy. And then I downloaded it and I was like, I'm, starting to get into some personal development things. And I found this guy on there called Bob Proctor, and he was hosting an event. And I thought, well, I might as well try, because he seems to have answers. He seems to be living a life that he loves, and I'm certainly not. So maybe there's something I can learn from him. And after spending 4 days virtually streaming his live event out of Canada, I was like, I need to work with this guy. Like, he is amazing. And I heard that he was hosting this big intensive event, like intimate group, like for 10 days over in Toronto. And I had to build up so much courage even to call the salespeople to ask them about it.
Wow.
But long story short is I took out a loan, probably the worst financial advice, but it turned out to be perfect. Because I took out a loan because I certainly couldn't cover the cost of the event on my salary, flew to Toronto, had my life and my mind really transformed within those 10 days, and came back with such a different perspective on how we can create our reality. And that was really step one of me becoming unstuck, was realizing actually I'm not trapped. I do have choices. I just have to look at my situation differently. And so that was really the kind of pivotal moment for me of where everything began to change in the most beautiful way possible.
Wow, it's so cool. And I love the phrase success leaves clues. And what I've
Yes.
been learning recently is like there's two types of people. One, and perhaps I was very like this in the past, like completely triggered by it. And you'd get compare and despair type thinking, like, oh my God, that person's so incredible. I could never be like that or do that. Or equally, people who seem to have the ability to remain humble and just go and ask them, say, how are you doing that thing? And you can start learning. And yeah, I mean, it sounds
Mhm.
exactly what you did. How cool. I do
Mhm.
confess to having had a bit of exposure to Bob Proctor, and I did some coaching around his content that actually went very poorly. My wife and I did it together. That's a whole nother story. But I've seen like multiple hours of him coaching. So did you see him in
Mhm.
person before he died doing it when he
Yeah,
went to
so
Toronto? Cool. Really
it
cool.
was a
Yeah.
really
What an
cool
impressive
event
guy.
actually. Yeah, he was it was a really intimate event it was called the Matrix at the time. So there might have been like 30 people in the room. Um so yeah,
Wow,
I
that's
got
nothing.
to
That's nothing.
no, it was
Yeah.
tiny. So I mean, the price tag reflected that, but it at the time for me at least. But no, I got to meet him. I actually got to manifest one of my dreams at the time was to sit down and interview him, like with his whole studio set up. We were over at his home, got to meet his whole family, see his recording studio. We used to do his videos. So it was a really like special experience. It wasn't just sitting in an event like a UPW or Tony Robbins thing where you're like one of thousands. It
Mm.
was a very intimate experience to really learn from him and the closest people around him, and have dinner with them and like learn how they think. And for me, I think that was the biggest thing at the time. What I needed the most, more than any other solution in that moment, was a shift in thinking. Because especially in like I'll say especially in Ireland, because that's all I really have a reference point to. But growing up, like thinking differently, thinking about personal development or personal growth was very woo woo, very out there. You're kind of criticized, like you're kind of weird, or there must be something wrong with you if you're into that. Um, so to all of a sudden be surrounded by people who like were obsessed with it, and they were showing that this isn't just like fluff stuff that like just the weirdos study. This is the stuff that's people who are insanely successful and insanely wealthy, who are rich, who are living lives that they truly love and are lit up by. Like this is the stuff they study. And that was such a game changer too, to like normalize this world. And like even coming back and posting my first Instagram post, it was something so basic and generic of like, your vibe attracts your tribe, or you become one of the average the 5 people around you, like something so simple.
Mm.
But I remember the hesitation to post it, being like,
Yeah.
people are going to know now that I'm into this stuff, and what are they going to
Yeah.
say? And So we got over that and
And
moved forward anyway.
you're at the time, your 50 Instagram followers were probably like, your second cousin who was definitely judging you. At the time, they would have been, right? They're like, what the hell are
100%.
they doing? But
Oh
I
yeah.
guess that's the point though, isn't it? It's that's the pain. It's like you have to go head
Mhm.
on through that and actually do it to see where it takes you. And speaking of which, like the mindset change, like I've heard phrases which I've really enjoyed in the past as well. It's like the best investment you can make is in yourself. And
Yeah.
that's precisely what you did. Is you're like, okay, the risk is obviously I don't pay this loan back, but the upside is basically change your life. It's like that's an incredible risk reward in anyone's book.
Yeah.
So what changed after that then?
So, change is inside out. And time again, no matter how much of my accountant brain or my strategic brain wants to take over, like I know that to be the truth. And it's not just something I've read in a book, it's something I very much lived, breathed, experience, have seen time and time again with people that I work with as well. It's inside out. And I think the biggest transformation happened at that event was internally. So on the outside, like nothing had changed. I still came back to my job, still living in the same apartment, like Dublin was still looking the same. But I just viewed the world so differently. And I shifted from a place of maybe fear or like limitation or restriction on what was possible to I've got to burn the bridge, set my goal, and then just move forward so boldly. And I really did that to the point that, I left my job, which months prior would have been insane to me. Like, what am I going to do? But I quit my job and I moved out of the apartment and I just trusted that things that I wanted next were going to line up. My HR department, like director, called me in. She thought I was having like a quarter life crisis because nobody leaves like a big four a job at that level with that kind of prestige and have nothing lined up. Like, what is wrong with you? And I remember being like, I know they were so convinced I was going to a competitor or something else. And I was just like, no, I know there's more for me. And I think that was the real sense that I think so many people connect with is this feeling of I'm meant for more. Like there's more to my life than this. And what's so kind of upsetting, I suppose, for so many is that they don't have the mindset or the courage to really believe in that fully or to bet on themselves to see what that might look like. But me at that point in my early 20s definitely was like, I'm burning the bridges, as Bob said. I had such faith in his teachings and such faith in how the universe was going to co-create with me and manifest something better. And I quit, moved forward, and I'm talking weeks. Things changed very dramatically, like very dramatically.
You'd actually finished working in that job and something else came along like almost immediately.
Yeah, so it was like quite like so weird looking back on it how it all panned out because even though the next opportunity, like I thought maybe at one point I'll go to LA and become an actor and that sounded really fun. I didn't really want to be in finance anymore, but I know I'm glad now on hindsight I didn't. But I ended up like moving into this small role back in my hometown. Everyone saw it as like a massive step back of like, oh, you've kind of failed because you've left the big city and you're going back home and you're working for a smaller firm. But I just had this like really ridiculous delusional sense that like something bigger was coming. And I used to like just obsessively read every single day. I used to be doing my journaling, my gratitude, like all the practices. And I just had this unshakable faith. And so even though for everyone else on the outside, taking that role was like this massive step back, I thought, well, look, it's helping me pay towards my debt that I now have to pay off. And I think I was in that role 2 weeks when my manager came and said, hey, our London team actually have something. They're looking for someone for like maybe 10 days to work on with them. Are you available? And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? Now it was in a role in a department and a type of work that I'd never done before, but I thought, look, why not give it a try? It'll be fine. And saying yes to that opportunity led me then very quickly to be offered a new role in London, which that in itself had manifested to be my dream role. So when I was like 18 going in the shiny gates of, university to study finance, this role that I now had created would have been like the dream role for me. And so what it led to was, yes, I was working in a finance team, but we were small, we were nimble, and we were traveling the world constantly. helping all of our other teams internationally. And my salary like almost trebled with bonuses. I became one of the top paid employees at my level. I now was like staying at 5-star hotels and going to Michelin star restaurants and flying business and first class.
Awesome.
And I got to work with these just incredible individuals who were like multi-millionaires, and even some of them were billionaires, right? Some of the people who own the companies we were working with. And this just absolutely scrambled my head in the most beautiful, perfect way, because it opened up. It was like stepping through a door to a completely different world of like, oh, like people live this kind of life and this is possible. And I was now living into this new reality of what life could look like. And so it's really interesting that even though the next step forward after the Bob Proctor event seemed like such a step backwards for everyone else, I just had such faith that it was all working in my favor. And it really did. And it was extraordinary. Like I had the best time while I was working in finance until it no longer made sense. And then things changed again. But while I was there, it was amazing.
And I think that's one of the hard things about manifestation, which is certainly an area that I've played around in the last couple of years, because it tests you. It's like, I know what I want, but like, how hard are you going to manifest it? Because it's so easy to drop off, be like, that's not possible. You know what I mean? Or it's like, oh, it's just not happening right now. So that means it's not the right thing, or whatever. You get so quickly that, as you mentioned, the accountant brain, the rational brain kicks in. It's like, oh no, it's impossible. You always knew it was impossible. Give up now. But when you reflect on moments like what you just described, it's like, actually, it all made sense in the rearview mirror. But to most people around you, they're like, they're mental. And that's the fun bit about taking risks.
Well, I'm sure everyone around me thought I was absolutely crazy. Like, what is she doing? But I would think I was so like delusional to it. And I was just so like oblivious almost of just, it all made sense in my head some way. And I think that's why, like, anytime you're, taking big risks or really challenging yourself, like studying manifestation and how it really works is so important, because knowing, okay, this is how my conscious mind feeds into my subconscious mind, and that shifts the energy of my body, and it's setting up this kind of cause and effect situation in the world around me. Like, just knowing some of the mechanics of how I was actually manifesting just gave me such hope to like hold on and stay persistent and stay committed, especially in those moments where it was like people were a bit judgy, or like things kind of on the outside hadn't really changed yet. But I was like, no, but I know this has to work. I'm not just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping. Like, I understand why it will work. And so that was really such a solid foundation for me to be able to like keep persisting and keep going until things on the outside then begin to catch up. Because there's a time delay, right? We shift so quickly on the inside at times. But the outside world, it's like dense energy, physical energy. It just takes a little time to catch up and reflect what's going on. And our real job is to stay consistent. It's not to keep visualizing it and then doubting it. And, then you're one step forward, 2 steps back constantly. So yeah, it's a journey, but really understanding it and what's happening below the surface is like the game changer.
And Laura, whilst we're at this moment, it would be wonderful to spend some time going into a little more detail as to what you mean by that. So what is the relationship between the subconscious and the conscious, and how can you play with those two things to create what it is you want?
Yeah, so I'm actually really glad you said the word create, because oftentimes when we talk about manifesting, depending where you've come from, what your background is and your experience with it, it can sound very like witchy. Now, as a witch of Wall Street, I love that. But for some people, it can be very off-putting, and it can kind of feel like, oh, that's just people who sit in hemp and like sing Kumbaya. Like, I'm not into that at all. And it's kind of gotten a little bit of a bad rap, because some people really make it something that it's not. But at the core of it, like, manifestation is creating. And off the back of that, having studied with Bob and so many other different teachers and mentors over the last 15 years, I've developed my own system, which is how to create your rich life. And so create is an acronym that actually takes you through the process of manifestation. Because what I discovered learning from so many different sources is sometimes you can end up this point where you're like, okay, how am I actually even manifesting on a day-to-day basis? Like, am I meant to meditate? Am I meant to visualize? Am I meant to journal? Like, am I scripting? Am I meant to be dancing? Am I tapping? Like, what am I doing? And it can become really overwhelming. And so I developed this system called Create, which I just think simplifies everything and breaks it down really nicely. So high level, what it is first step is you need to get clarity on what your goal is, like what your vision is, what type of results are you working towards, right? You got to be clear to the universe, right? Because if you don't know what it is you're trying to call in, you're never even going to spot the opportunities or the conversations or the little subtle hints that might be coming down from the spiritual realm, right? Or the energetic realm into your physical realm. So really having like clarity, like crystal clear on what you want. The second step is recognizing resistance, because there's a reason that hasn't come into your life yet. And most cases, it's because there's some block around it. And that isn't a bad thing. That's just a very normal part of the process of like, I want to grow my business 10x. All right, well, why don't I think that's possible? And I think in the realm of, spirituality and manifestation, everyone loves just to be hyper positive. And I kind of fell into that toxic trap too, of like, don't talk to me about anything negative. I can't feel a negative emotion. And it's actually just like awful spiritual bypassing of like emotional regulation and like taking care of yourself. But I went through that journey as well of being like hyper positive. I must have been an absolute pain to be around. So the next step really is like, what is the resistance? What is the block? Like, write down, and I get my students to do this, like, tell me all the reasons you don't think that's possible. And I get a bit surprised sometimes when I ask that question, because they're like, I meant to say the negative stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because it's inside you, right? We're manifest not just from our conscious mind, but we manifest from what's inside. So if you have all this as like it's not going to happen, I don't believe it, like that is your set point of magnetism. So we got to recognize what that is. And don't worry, I'm not going to leave you there in that place, because the next step, the E, is to emotionally release it. So we're going to now regulate your nervous system, go through different practices so we can get this junk out of you, because it isn't the truth, right? It's just a story or something that you've just been repeating to yourself, or you've picked up along the way that you're not worthy, you're not good enough, smart enough, whatever it is, that it can't be possible because you've never done it before. So you have all these different beliefs and blocks. And so, there's different practices that I love to use to help release them. EFT tapping is one, breath work is another. You can also just do mindset work, like journaling it out. Another one is like acting like the most incredible defense lawyer and, arguing for the opposite. Like if you say, I don't believe I can do this because I've never done it before. Well, then act as a defense lawyer and tell me all the reasons why that is absolute BS. And that's not true. And so once we've released, the next two steps actually work beautifully together, which is to affirm and transform. So this is all about affirming this new reality, because if you've had these beliefs, which are like the weeds in your mind, the weeds in your subconscious, that have been telling you can't do something, we now need to flip that script and start giving our brain, giving our mind something more nourishing, right? And give it all the reasons that it can happen. So we affirm this new reality. The T is really about turning up transformed. And a really simple way to do this is simply ask, what would the version of me who's already achieved my goal, my vision, what would they do? And that one question is so powerful. It has moved me forward in so many ways, like from moving into different homes to saying yes to opportunities I didn't feel ready for, like taking risks that felt really scary and like way outside my comfort zone. And anytime I'd catch myself being like, and the brain starts bringing up excuses and maybe I'm not ready and maybe another time, and it's just not the right timing, and the brain is so fantastic giving us all the reasons, right? I just go, what would the version of me who's already achieved my goal be doing? Would they be doing that? Okay, then go. You have to go. And then the E is to equalize, which really stands for to normalize this new reality. Because if we keep our vision like out here in the distance, like out far away, and if we think it's really big and it's really going to be hard to get, then it's really hard to manifest it because it feels like distant from us. And we want to bring it up really close and make it like the most obvious, logical, inevitable next step in our journey. And so that is really, I guess, where we're going to delve more into how the mind works. But that is the system that I have found just simplifies the whole process then you can, set your intention, what it is you want to manifest, go through a process, and know then you're on the path to actually allowing that into your life.
Really cool. I'd almost like to sign up myself. I love this kind of stuff. And I've done it. I'm trying to figure out what direction to best take this in, but I absolutely love the benefits of doing this kind of work. And in particular, when we have conversations like we're having right now, like you are the social proof, Laura. Like you've done this. It actually works because
Yeah.
here I am here to tell the story. So it's very compelling, right? Anyone out there that's now watching this, like Laura's the person to go and ask, like, teach me how to do this. One thing that came up for me through that was really around that emotional phase, the E. And shout out to Jin, who put us in touch for this conversation in the first place. And one of the best parts of the coaching I did with her was around the emotional accountability and actually processing these emotions. So if someone says to you, like, why can't you do this thing? And it's basically like, oh, because I'm not good enough, or that's way too hard, or, I'm going to basically bankrupt my family. And all these things, they're just not true. And if you kind of write it down properly, you can work through it. So it's that resonates very, very strongly with me. Perhaps you could talk me through some of the use cases you might have come to mind in terms of the benefits of teaching your students this kind of framework.
Yeah, I think having a process to go through gives you so much faith and belief, right? Especially if you're kind of new to the world, or even if you're not. Because even as myself, someone who's been in it for so long, if you're just kind of hoping and wishing, or like, oh, I'm sure it will work out, like the universe has got my back and all these things, like that's all really nice and it can take you so far. You can go and get motivated by an event or by a speaker. But having an actual system that you can follow, that is going to take you from point A to point whatever you want to be, and it works, like it just backs up that faith, backs up that belief. So when you're taking action, it gives you so much more confidence and courage in doing so. Now, as much as I love talking about the mindset behind change and success and money and the manifestation side of it, the reason I even named the business The Witch of Wall Street was because the Wall Street side, the money side, is actually really important too. And, if I had just gone to Bob Proctor and, stopped there, I would never be on this conversation with you. I would probably still just be working in corporate finance and working my way up the ladder and all that kind of thing. But the thing that really shifted for me and actually gave me opportunities and options and choices and time to really reflect of like, how do I want to live my life? And it takes us back to the very start of this conversation, like what I'm most excited about right now that I'm working on is bringing together this world of, the more woo, the spiritual, the inner world with the physical outer world. Because yes, we are these beautiful souls and spirits living in this body, but we are living in a very physical 3D world. And there's an economy and it runs on money, and money is the currency that we are using for our freedom and for our options and for our choices. And so I learned really early on that I would be doing quite a disservice to my clients if I just took them as far as how do you manifest your results? How do you make more money through that process? And then left, right? And I think, as you kind of mentioned earlier, it's like looking back in the rearview mirror. You can only connect the dots looking back, as Steve Jobs says. I think the universe obviously had like a cunning plan in place for me, because it's quite strange to be so into the personal development and self-growth and so passionate about learning these things, but also being an accountant with 10 years working in finance and a finance degree and all these other aspects that are kind of on paper, they don't really melt very well together. But what I love to do is actually show clients and people that I work with, how do we bring these worlds together to get you the full transformation? Because freedom doesn't just lie in making more money, right? If that was the case, people would be living a very different reality. It's actually quite simple to make more money. One of the biggest challenges I see, and this is even with people who are making very good money, great income, is they have no idea how to manage it. And so what I like to do is actually bring these two worlds together to say, all right, let's go through the create system. Let's make sure that you're bringing in enough income, that you're reaching your goals, and that you're shifting your relationship with money, your beliefs around money from scarcity to abundance and all these things. We're going to do all the inner work, absolutely. But let's ensure that when that money is flowing in, you actually know what to do with it and you know how to grow it. Because I've also spoken with women, even just like literally this week who are making great money in their business, but they don't know what to do with it. And so they've uncovered this belief on this block of, I don't actually really want to bring more in, because if I'm struggling how to even manage what I have, if I bring in an extra 100 grand next month, that's actually going to feel really overwhelming. Now, consciously, Jake, they might say, of course I want more money, but subconsciously there's a resistance. And so how that resistance can show up is there might be an opportunity or potential client or a sales call they could make, and they're not doing it. Because even though they know they could, they're going to make up an excuse for themselves. And the reason being is because there's a belief that if I actually do that and it works and more money comes in, I don't know how to manage it. And that's going to feel really overwhelming and kind of scary. And so our subconscious mind that wants to keep us safe is like, let's stay away. So we want to bring safety and neutrality around all aspects of money. And so what I do is take people through like the process of actually managing your money. And it doesn't have to be hard, like simple things like, what are you making? What are you actually spending? Where's there money leaks in your day-to-day on a monthly basis, right? Let's look at your cash flow. Do you have savings set up properly? Are they in the right types of accounts? Do you have any debt lingering? Like what's happening here? How are you setting yourself up for the future? And then of course, a big thing that I'm super passionate about, which potentially gave me the most freedom, is investing. You know, are you building wealth for your future? And again, simple strategies. I'm not here to talk about trading or FX currency trading or anything like that. It's like simple strategies for the majority of people who just want to put their money to work and then move on with what they're passionate about. And I have found in my experience, melding those two worlds together and providing this very 360 strategy has given the best results, because now when my money flows in, I also know what to do with it, and I know how to manage it and how to multiply it.
So I'm intrigued, Laura, when it comes to investing, what's the best approach for helping people manage their let's say they've got great cash flow, and even in that scenario where they're getting anxious about getting more cash flow, what is the general framework that you help people invest with? Like what are the type of assets that you're helping people put money into, and what's the aim of the game in that sense?
Yeah, so I mean, before we even have the investing conversation, I always highlight like you've really got to have control over your money first. And that's why taking yourself on a money date is so important, because otherwise what can happen is you get all excited by investing, you put your money in the stock market, or you put your money into whatever investments you're looking at, and then something happens, life happens, and you're not set up with your other personal finances to manage that. And so then you're forced to pull your money out of your investments. And that can happen at the worst time possible, which I've seen for so many people. The global financial crisis is a great example where people were like over leveraged. They were investing, they weren't managing their finances well. And so they were taking on too risky bets. And so then they're forced to take their money out at the worst time, make massive losses, be completely financially traumatized by the whole event, and never invest again. So I'm like, let's make sure that your personal finances are set up, that we're going to be looking at your savings, that you're going to have proper savings in place. You're going to have like an FU fund or like your emergency fund, whatever words you want to use for it, to ensure that worst case scenario, income disappears tomorrow, you're good. Or you're not going to have to pull your money out of your investments. Like, you're good. Let's make sure that your debt is covered. That it's good. You're not like drowning in credit card interest rate debt and also still trying to invest. Like, that is not the approach to take. So I'm always really cautious before I say, let's go invest, is to say, let's look at your finances first. And then once you're set up and you're in a solid financial foundation, like you've got the house together, right? Your finances are good. Then we can go invest, actually build your wealth. But it is by no means step one. And I want to be really, really clear on that, because it can end in disaster very quickly.
That's
However,
a great point.
when you are ready to start investing, what I like to use are very, very simple instruments. So looking at ETFs, looking at index funds. The majority of investors neither have the interest, in my experience, the time, or really, I suppose, the skill to be able to fully assess a stock and its potential performance in the long run, to a degree that they're not going to put themselves in a very risky situation and end up losing a lot of money. So, stock picking can feel very exciting. We all wish we picked Apple back in 2008. We all wish, that there's so many stocks we wish we had jumped in on early, right? But that's the benefit of hindsight. And the reality is that, back in 2008, when we were looking at Apple or Amazon, they were selling for about $2.80 a share. Now, that should tell you everything you need to know about how the market viewed those companies. Is no one probably really thought that these were going to be the unicorn companies that they were. They were very, very cheap to buy, which reflects their valuation at the time. Right? So it's not like everybody knew Apple was going to be a runaway. And anyone who says, oh, absolutely knew it, you never know, right? Because that's the nature of the world we live in. There is no absolute certainty. So taking an approach of investing in funds like index funds, ETFs, just completely reduces your risk when it comes to investing. It takes so much of the selection bias out of it. And it gives you so much diversification that you can set up a really healthy long-term strategy that will still provide good returns. You're beating inflation, you're still allowing your money to grow, and it can help you get to where you want to be long-term. But again, it's why we bring it in with the manifestation process, because there's a part where you want to bring in more money in the now. And then there's a part where you grow your money, but it's a long-term strategy. I'm not promising to 10x your money in 12 months, because that's either going to be a scam of some sort, or it's going to involve incredibly high risk, right? High risk, high return. It's a correlation there. And for the most people, they're not able to manage that level of high risk, or it could potentially financially ruin them. So long-term strategy just works, and the historical data backs that up as well, of taking that approach instead.
You made a comment earlier about a process that you take people through, which is make money, manage money, multiply money. Let's spend a bit of time talking through what that means.
Yeah, so this is what I was sharing with you at the start, that I'm really excited to bring to professionals, to people who are really feeling stuck, because when I look back on my own journey, when I look back at what's worked the best and most effective in my teaching over the last 10 years, this is the process. And I always say, before you start, outsourcing your challenges or where you feel stuck in your life to other people, you really have to take control of your finances first and get in control of money. Because otherwise you're going to come from a place of scarcity, from fear, from this internal pressure, right? You have to really feel confident and in control of your money. And when you do, it creates all this mental capacity to actually then start getting creative about, okay, well, what might be the next step? And maybe then at that point, you want to hire the corporate coach to move up the corporate ladder, or you're going to hire the business coach to implement the strategy. But if you're doing those things while your finances are in a bit of a shambles, while you're feeling stressed about money, while you're feeling like I don't have options, like kind of where I was back in 2015, because I don't have the money to move, it's a very hard place to manifest from. It's a very hard place to actually create real lasting change from. So the solution I provide is, let's really hone in on the fundamentals. So that is, how do you manage your money? So taking them through that process that I mentioned earlier of let's look at your income, your expenses, your savings. And this sounds so basic, but you would be amazed how many people I work with who have no idea. They might know what they're making, but they do not know what they're spending, where it's going, how much they have really in savings. Most of it's sitting in just a checking account or a regular savings account, which is losing them money every single year. And so they just don't understand the basics of fundamentals. And it's not their fault. Education system doesn't teach it. Most people like myself didn't come from the kind of family who has this education. So where are you meant to get it from? Right? So I always am no shame game. Come in, you're here to learn. The fact you don't have these things in place, that's why you're here. But you really have to get your finances in order. And then we look at making more money. This is really where we get to play with the inner world. And it is magic. It feels like magic, even though we can understand a little bit of science behind it. But it can feel like magic when you start aligning your energy and your actions to your intention and just the things that start to appear in your life. Now, I'm not someone who ever is going to say you can manifest by just chilling on the couch and visualizing and that's it. I'm very much about active manifestation, right? You've got to be an active participant. You're co-creating with the universe. So for example, even just recently with my partner, we have a dream home that we've identified. It's maybe 2 hours from us. Now, at this very current moment, it is way outside of our budget, and that's okay. But we said, okay, well, let's turn up transform. Let's get into the manifestation process. Let's co-create. if we still keep sitting on our couch and waiting for the day that all of a sudden all that money is in our bank account and we're ready to go and buy, cash out like perfect, like it will never really happen. And even if the money was there, we probably wouldn't then actually go do it because we wouldn't even be like, attuned to it. So I was like, let's take action now. So let's go do the house viewings. Let's go live down in the area. Let's go spend the weekend there and like live into the energy and imagine what it can feel like. So when we are doing a visualization and when we are using a manifestation process, we have something to go off, right? Because we've actually taken action. And you'll be amazed then of who you meet, how you connect with things, opportunities that flow your way, how money just suddenly starts to come to you because now you have like a vision and something you're working towards. So it's very much active manifestation, and it's the most fun. It is the most fun journey to go on. Like, don't be passive with it, be active, enjoy it. It's like, it's never the goal. It's never reaching the end goal. It's the journey to it. It's like climbing a mountain. You got to look around every step of the way. It's not just to reach the summit. And then off the back of that,
you're really chasing your dreams.
Is the multiplier.
When you talk about that. Sorry to cut you off, Laura, but that's what you're chasing. Your dream, aren't you? That's what you're envisioning. It's like, oh, that's my dream, and then it's the action steps that you then take. That's what gets you so fired up. I can feel it coming straight through because you're like, well, if we head in that direction anyway, it'll probably figure itself out.
Yeah.
Well,
100%, right? And it's like acting with faith. We even brought back some like brochures from real estate agents, and we have them on our coffee table now. And we just like flick through them, and like
classic.
It just puts you into this energy of like, this is now it, right? Because it comes back to that question: what would the version of me who's already achieved my goal be doing? I'm like, well, the person who already has that money, who can buy that dream home, like they would be going to the viewings. They would be down checking out the area. They'd be looking at the schools for the kids, and seeing what the clubs are and what the activities look like, and they would be looking at these things. So I was like, why would we wait? Because you're not showing any faith or trust in the universe to provide this for you if you're not even turning up. So yes, chasing your dreams, going for it. And like, who cares if you're delusional? If people think you're crazy, like let them, but have fun, because it's the most fun to turn up and act delusional. But you have to, because you're believing in something that hasn't appeared yet. And this isn't my saying, but both faith and fear require you to believe in the invisible. So you get to choose. Do you want to be fearful of the future, something that hasn't existed yet? Or do you want to have faith in it and what's possible? And so you have to believe in something that doesn't exist, and you get to choose which side of that you want to be on. I would rather choose faith every single day. Now, fear still creeps in, of course, right? And you can feel it. Oh my goodness, yes. The fear is like, it's there, it's present. But it's understanding that fear doesn't necessarily always go away. It's just you kind of learn to still move forward with it. You can still feel the fear and do it anyway, right? It's just like, yeah. And that like nervous system regulation work of tapping and breath work and, understanding how manifestation works, like they are all tools that have really helped me just manage the fear, because sometimes it can be so overwhelming, especially when those around you are looking at you a little bit crazy.
And Laura, I'm smirking over here because I've been house hunting myself this last week, and I found a couple of places where I'm like, oh, that's way too expensive. And then I ran a number and I looked at like how much would it cost and what are the closing prices and what would the interest rates be and how much would it cost to carry the debt. And I look at net assets. I'm like, well, you could do it. And it's that like fear response of like, well, no, I can't, can I? That number's too big. You're like, it's a whole new phase of the world. But the vision I've been working on, that person would have already bought it. I've been sitting here thinking that as you've been telling me those stories. You're like, shit, well, maybe this was the message from the universe, was this conversation we're having right now to go, Jake, you can do it, mate. And maybe tomorrow will be a very different day for me. Laura, I'd love to ask, I kept this till the end of the conversation because I know you shared with me when I first contacted you, oh, Jake, I can see your podcast has a lot of stuff around Bitcoin. Are you sure you want to, have me on? Because it's not something I necessarily look at. So question number one is, I have to get a bit of Bitcoin in the conversation. And have you ever owned any Bitcoin? Is it something you've ever looked at?
Yeah, I mean, the basics of like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and that's it. I put it in my alternative investment bucket, and
Okay.
I had a bit of fun with it. And so I invested in both of those back, I think 2019. But I've just kept a little bit going and continuously, and that's it. But for me, I don't know, maybe it's my background or whatever it is, the traditional finance of like, I fully understand how the stock market works. I fully understand how the financial markets work. And so I feel very confident and comfortable investing in them. I don't fully understand the crypto markets, to be quite frank. So, even in my communities, like I'll have other guest speakers come in and talk about it because I'm like, there's amazing potential there. Clearly, you've seen the growth. We've seen the many people who've become incredibly wealthy off the back of it. But it's not an area I fully understand. So I couldn't really give the average person a full assessment of the potential risks or anything like that. I just know that my approach is very much similar to my investing approach, which is long-term, of invest, hold, and let's see what happens with it.
So you've mentioned a couple of things today that I think when you start to draw the dots in the way that I've experienced, it is honestly it's the richest intellectual experience I've ever had. And it's asking the question, what is money? And that took me down like basically a whole historical journey of like, first we were using commodity money like beads and shells, and then that eventually moved to precious metals like bronze and silver and gold. And Bitcoin is essentially the latest iteration of what the Austrian School of Economics describe as sound money. And the way that I look at crypto is Bitcoin is a unbelievable innovation that will be here for 1,000 years and is the cornerstone of digital money. Whereas things like Ethereum and the rest of the market are actually highly speculative software projects. And so over the last 5 years, what I've used Bitcoin as is a savings tool. So it's savings technology. It's not even strictly an investment. And it's not something that was obvious to me because of a more traditional set of coaching, essentially. So having used money managers or wanted, a diversified portfolio, and they're taking you through the different options. Like Bitcoin's this thing that just no one understands what it is. So I would love, in a way, over the next however long we get to chat in the future, it's like if I could get you to understand Bitcoin specifically at a higher level, I think that both yourself and your customers would really benefit from getting to know it better. Because the person that you described at the start that's like super stressed because they're making as much money as they can, but their bills are going up, their time's completely warped. Bitcoin is a savings tool that beats purchasing power better than anything else I've ever seen, and it gives you your time back. So yeah, that's my small pitch, but it would be something that I'd really, if you ever wanted to know more about, I'd love to spend some time taking you through it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sold. I've never even thought of it as a savings tool. I just strictly saw it as, a speculative form of investing. So even just that shift is quite awesome. And
really,
I know
interesting.
It's one of the reasons and it's one of the reasons I've been having people come into my community to like speak on crypto, is because I know it's a very necessary part of understanding money and finance and, financial freedom. I know I'm not the expert on it. And I'd rather just bring in experts than, say, oh, I'm the expert and I'm going to teach on this. I've spent many, many years studying what I know. And I rather than pull from the brilliant brains of like yourself to come in and say, okay, you now obviously live and breathe this. Like, what would you know? And what would you share that people must really understand about it?
Well, awesome, man. And anytime I'd be happy to join. It really struck me. Some of the posts that you were making since I started following you, it's like, oh my God, Bitcoin would be such a key part of the process that you're building. It would just slot in perfectly because it just sits there in self-custody and just goes up in purchasing power. You don't have to manage it in the same way that, someone finds an index tracker helpful because there's no management involved. And you're likely to beat the real rate of inflation. You're like, okay, perfect. That's a better tool for saving than most of the other stuff out there. Bitcoin just does it even better. Anyway, Laura, we're hitting up on the hour. Thank you so much for your time today. It struck me so many times it is the blend of investing in mindset that drives financial returns. So there's an excellent book that I can share with you actually that's about intergenerational family wealth protection. And it talks specifically about investing in humanistic wealth, which is essentially people. So a partner, a relationship, children. Obviously, if you don't have children of your own, then the wealth you generate in your lifetime, who's it for? Like, it's for no one, essentially. And then it's intellectual investing. So it's, looking at your mindset. And it's the combination of humanistic and intellectual together that drives financial results. And that's basically essentially exactly what you've been describing today.
Amazing. I look forward. What's the name of the book, did you say?
I have to dig it up because I can't remember exactly, but it's like, classic. I'm referencing a book that I can't remember the
Come
title
back to me with it.
I'll tell you. Laura, if people want to reach out and get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
I mean, they can reach out on Instagram. It's witch_of_Wall Street. I also have a YouTube channel. It's called Her Rich Life Mindset. And otherwise, just head to my website, lauratynan.com, and all the info is there.
Awesome. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Jake. It's been awesome.